Ooh, Jim, how are you doing, sir?
Doing well. How you
we
doing,
haven't
Paul?
seen you in a long time there. Austin Golding, Golden Barge Line, and Jim Richards, President, CEO, KLLM Trucking. We got so many things to talk about, but I wanted to open it up on this one here. Let's talk about the supply chain, first of all. Then we'll talk about the labor part of this. In your estimation, Jim, why do we have this? Is it fabricated? Is it a reality that could be solved? It's not solved. As someone who has one of the biggest trucking operations anywhere in the country, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, Paul, I can assure you that it's not fabricated.
Yeah.
We're dealing with it each and every day, and it's affecting us in ways we've never even dreamed about. And it's hard to separate them from labor because, quite frankly, labor is a big piece of the problem. Yeah. It's a huge piece of the problem, especially on the trucking side. In years past, it's always been a problem at shippers and receivers getting unloaded and loaded timely. These days, they don't have labor at the warehouses. Our customers don't have labor, and so we're spending excess amounts of time where historically it may take 2 to 3 hours to get unloaded or loaded. Now we're spending 10 and 12 hours. Yeah. So, not only do we have higher demand, we also have much disruption just due to labor shortages.
You have any idea what the percentage of people who did not return, who haven't returned?
I would think it's close to probably 10, 15%.
Wow.
And it's amazing. We really felt like after some of the benefits dried up that we would see some of those folks return. We've not seen that at all.
Same thing for you, Austin?
Absolutely. Labor, we're having the same struggles. On the right end, I saw several, billboards, advertising for labor. It's absolutely a shortage.
You would think the same thing that some of the people that were working for you before just did not come back?
I think we had a lot of guys that were older, especially, that were financially sound, sat it out in their mind. And, they've come back to work for us intermittently. Yeah. But a lot of them, I think were probably within 5 years of retirement and just decided to pull it early.
Here's the question that we have and a lot of people. By the way, if you do have a question for these two fine gentlemen, on C-Spire text line at 601-879-4395, and we'll ask a couple of those questions in a moment or two. But how are these people surviving? That's what everybody's asking. So the benefits are out now. How are you paying the bills? Is everybody moving in with mom and dad in the basement?
Well, I do think that there's a lot of benefits that are still continuing.
Got to be.
And I also think a lot of people have realized that they enjoy being home and probably could live on less than what they did in the past. And so we've just not seen people return to work. And it has been surprising. But it's not a trucking problem. It's a labor problem across the country. Yeah. And you see it in restaurants. You see it on warehouse staff. You see it in truck drivers. You see it everywhere you look. When Domino's Pizza's offering a $1,000 sign-on bonus, that tells you got a problem.
Crazy. I've seen some people offering $5,000 to $15,000. So there were some who offered $15,000. I'm sure it's a long-term payout, but it's just gotten crazy. And I know you guys at Austin Golding at Golden Barge have done that also.
Well, we have, and I think there's also something we have to all own up to, that being in trucking or being in towboating wasn't promoted the way it should have been over the last 10 or 15 years. And we had a generational push towards college and towards a different set of expectations, when these are really, really good jobs that people should be proud to have. And they take a lot to earn. It's a lot of responsibility. And so I think we have a lot to make up for as far as recruitment and, early education when it comes to, to our industry especially.
I have heard this, though, from a lot of folks, certainly some of the Republican sides in Washington. If you think this labor shortage is bad now, if they pass this BBB with all the handouts that are in there, we may go from 10 to 15% of the people not wanting to work to 50%. And I think in a way that's what some people are hoping for.
Well, Paul, in all honesty, I mean, I don't see anything on the horizon that's going to improve this. Everything the current administration is doing basically discourages work. And I'll tell you, talk about everybody talks about the California situation with the ports. Yes. A lot of that is as a result of policy. The state of California has made it very difficult to be an independent contractor. They have basically outlawed any trucks older than 10 years old, which most of those guys use, and they basically put out of business the people that actually pick those containers up and dray them across town. So, it's a direct result of policy, and we do have some increased demand. But at the same time, when you put everybody out of business that was actually doing the work,
if either of you guys were in there, you'd do the same thing as a private sector guy named Donald Trump would have done. Because my understanding was at one point the union is preventing them from hiring more people there because the union doesn't want any more people. They want to make sure that they get overtime or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what's happening, but whatever it is, it benefits the union.
Absolutely, and that is one thing about President Trump. He is a businessman. He understands it. I was fortunate enough to spend a couple of days with him about a month ago, and he's a business guy. He ran the country like a business guy, and unfortunately, that is not the case today.
I want to hear this cut here. You talk about the only way you could get enough people to keep you in power while harming them at the same time is you have to indoctrinate them through disinformation. If you and I think they do this in a crisis as far as the left, whether it's real or fake, and sometimes they create the crisis and then they use this. But you've got to hear this. This is Congresswoman Escobar, and for some reason she is saying that she's figured out that the microclimate is, as far as global warming, has become a microclimate to her particular community. And then we have Senator Markey, Edward Markey, from Massachusetts, who's one of the most liberal guys out there, who is dying to put the oil industry out of business. But the thing that's so squirrely about this and so ridiculous to people who have a thinking brain is he's saying the oil companies are doing this, and they're raping the people of this country by hiking these gas prices up for no reason at all, because they want to take this bill. Well, this bill would be the high prices would probably help this bill because everybody's out there saying if you'll pass this bill, then we'll go all green and we won't be in. It's so convoluted it's hard to explain. You can hear it from yourself from Escobar and Markey.
I represent El Paso, Texas, a community in the Southwest that is warming faster than most other communities, where we are seeing increasing triple-digit temperatures, longer, hotter summers, in a community that has long been economically disadvantaged. That is killing people. I also represent El Paso as a border community. And for those who've been covering the movement of migrants across our hemisphere, there is no doubt that much of that migration is coming from the climate crisis.
We can see dramatically rising oil prices all across this country. Right now, oil companies are taking American consumers and shaking them upside down at gas pumps all across our country, while simultaneously sending a signal to the Republican Party to kill Build Back Better, to kill a transition to all-electric vehicles, to plug-in hybrids, to battery storage technologies that will lead inexorably, inevitably, to the demise of those companies controlling the agenda of our nation. The oil era will be over if we pass this bill. So for the babies and the grandparents who died in our country in just the last couple of months, for our national security, for our economic well-being, it is imperative that we pass this legislation before Christmas.
Give you guys a chance to respond to that when we come back. Got a break here. And again, in the studio, it's Austin Golding of Golding Barge Line and also Jim Richards, President and CEO of KLLM Trucking. We'll talk about some job opportunities, too, so gather the kid in the basement. Just if he's got a couple of seconds, put down the game controllers and come upstairs to listen. That affecting you guys as far as the EPA is concerned?
For sure. We, our new construction now, we have a tier change in our engine, Tier 3 to Tier 4, which will require DEF fluid in our exhaust. And
what kind of fluid?
Well, it's a uric acid that actually supposedly cuts down on our emissions through the exhaust system. And, it's a system that if you have a diesel truck, urea is part of that situation, too. We just call it DEF.
What does that cost your gallon?
Right now, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, to be honest. We don't run anything that requires it as of today. So we're looking at that as far as our next investment.
How many gallons do you fill up with?
Well, we hold anywhere from 20 to 30,000 gallons on a towboat, and probably burn between, southbound we'll burn 500 gallons a day, northbound we'll burn 2,500 gallons a day.
That's about the same as you guys, isn't it?
Not quite that much. We can't quite haul that much.
But it's affecting you guys also as far as all of these requirements. And the ones that he's put forth now and he's talked about, if they come to fruition, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, actually, in the trucking business, we've been running for the last probably about 7 or 8 years diesel exhaust fluid, which basically it's urea, which is, if you just want to talk about it, it's cow urine.
Yeah.
That basically causes a chemical reaction and burns off emissions. But it's what comes along with that, and those are good things that we are reducing emissions. However, the expense associated with that and the expense maintaining that has been just astronomical. The price of trucks jumped up about 25% about 5 or 6 years ago, and has continued to jump up about 5-10% every year.
How many in the KLLM fleet?
We run about 4,000 trucks.
4,000 trucks all over the country?
Correct. And so it's a very expensive solution. We can continue to see more and more environmental issues coming towards the trucking business. I was in a couple meetings the other day, and in the next probably 5 or 6 years, they're talking another 30% increase due to emission controls. Increase in price of trucks.
And the problem with that, and we were just talking about this off the air, the marketplace has been taking care of a lot of these things, and we've made a lot of improvements as far as pollution is concerned. And other than in the major cities, it's not really that much of a concern, but everything they talk about is babies dying from pollution, as you just heard on those 2 cuts.
Well, that's a trigger point for the Democratic Party. I mean, that's all that is a talking point, and they know it gets people's attention. People are not dying because of that. Is it a good thing that we are improving the environment?
Sure.
Absolutely. And within reason, we need to continue to do that. I think the United States has probably come further than any other country.
Well, you saw at the summit, Russia wasn't there, China wasn't there, so they're not even a player. And China right now is building coal plants out the wazoo. So how do you come to the American people and say pass this bill that's the biggest transformative package since the Great Society and LBJ, and a lot of it deals with green tech and stuff like that, and they're not even going to help out. It's ridiculous. When we talk about the supply chain, you are the guys that get this stuff to market, but then again, you are being hurt by the supply chain. Certainly, when you need parts and things such as that, Austin, that's got to be hurting you also.
Oh, for sure. Anytime we have any kind of maintenance issue, it's a waiting game for when we can get it solved if we don't have to fabricate it ourselves. And a big part of what we're seeing at each one of these ports is really a inconsistency port to port when it comes to what their facilities can manage and really the in and out, ingress, egress as far as what's allowed. I have no doubt that in California, the Port of Long Beach and L.A., it's a lot more difficult to operate there than it is in Houston or New Orleans. And that's a problem. I mean, we have everything coming towards a state and a location that is going to be more punitive towards both our businesses than other ports. But because everything comes from Asia, it's all bottlenecked and it's at their discretion. So it's a huge problem.
It's even more so when you put politics in it, Jim, because nobody wants to hear about the solutions. If the solutions are something that's just, in black and white, if Trump said, well, we're just going to put another port somewhere in that area, then you start talking about politics and labor unions, et cetera.
Well, to Austin's point, California, they drive everything, and it's the most liberal, punitive state that there is to do business in. And so if you continue to use California as your inbound ports, then you're not going to see a whole lot of improvement there.
Could, because of where some of this is coming in. What other areas would be that have the same natural sites as far as deep water ports? There are other places on the East Coast or West Coast that would be as good.
Well, if you're going to talk about moving anything maritime from West Coast to either a Gulf or an East Coast port, it's going to become logistically really unaffordable. And that's where they really have us from a strategic standpoint. If you put it through the Panama Canal and then run it into a Gulf port, you got to want to sacrifice a lot of capital expense to make that happen.
So strategically, they just kind of got the package to themselves.
They are, but I mean, I think the way that if you had a different administration in now, or if you had different leadership, you could incentivize it in a different way, as opposed to de-incentivizing growth in both these sectors.
Where do we go from here as far as the main thing that's hurting you right now, Jim, as far as trucking is concerned? What's the solutions to some of those top 3 problems?
Well, again, labor is that's the main problem that we face today, and there's no incentives to encourage people to go back to work. So, I mean, I think somehow you've got to address the labor situation, or this is not going to get any better at all. And I think Austin would agree with me on that side.
Totally.
You mentioned parts earlier, but I will tell you that just from a supply standpoint, we typically get about 1,000 trucks a year, brand new trucks a year, and we've already been told that we'll get about 40% of those next year.
Where do they come from?
I mean, they're all over the country, but the suppliers can't supply the components because they don't have the parts, and so.
Is the microchip situation
that's
affecting
part of
those
it.
also?
It's microchips, and you hear a lot about microchips.
I don't guess there's anything that's got four wheels now that doesn't have microchips in them.
That's correct. I mean, you hear a lot about the microchips, but that's not the only components that are not available. And so you continue to see new product availability not there. I'll tell you something for the consumers. It's pretty interesting. Talking about labor. So a lot of our customers that we deliver to, food product customers, they don't have the labor to unload our trucks. And so they're basically asking us to hold that product. But then you go to their stores and the shelves are empty. So they don't have the labor to take the product, nor do they have the labor to get it into the store. And so the consumer walks in and there's no product, and it's all sitting in a warehouse or sitting in my truck.
Think about how that backs you up all the way to the people picking the fruit or whatever it happens to be. It backs up everything all the way through.
Absolutely. I'll tell you another thing, too, and I hear them talking about high pricing, and everything that we're dealing with there, and it's temporary. It's not temporary. A lot of the things that are causing the high pricing, a lot of which is wages, once you pay higher wages, that doesn't go back. And so, I think we're in a period where a lot of these costs that people are seeing at the grocery store and at the gas pump are probably not ever going to roll back to a period that they were prior. From
the truckers and the shippers who are shipping the gas, you have to have gas, so it's a vicious circle.
It is, I think that there's a real, I guess, selling point to creating a way to lower gas prices as far as it. People say the president can't affect gas prices. Well, in an indirect way, absolutely they can. And the administration, as far as regulation in our industry, there are no new tanks going in. There are no new pipelines going in. The existing infrastructure has to withstand this increased demand. So there's going to be a choke point. So we have to have investment on our side of the fence as well.
I mentioned a couple of times that one of the reasons that this administration is going to be in trouble we were saying this back after the election, and it is because its polling number shows that now, is we are close enough to what was to what is to see the contrast. And even the younger voters now go back and look and see what gas prices were what the gas prices were back in those days. But then when we ask for some type of solution from the people in Washington,
there's some Republicans who have criticized the administration big picture, right? Canceling Keystone Pipeline, halting leases for new drilling leases on federal land, saying that sort of the administration's policies writ large have contributed to the rise in gas prices. What's your response now to that?
Our response is that the rise in gas prices over the long term makes an even stronger case for doubling down our investment and our focus on clean energy options so that we are not relying on the fluctuations and OPEC and their willingness to put more supply and meet the demand in the market. So that's our view.
I think it's a perfect example. Create the crisis or use the crisis to achieve what you want to achieve.
Yeah, I think what's really going to get the administration in trouble, and is really doing it now, is inflation's touching every household. Yeah. And inflation is a direct result of the policies that they put in place. And so unless they do a 180 on their policies, there's really no way out for them. But it, at the gas pump and at the grocery store, middle and lower class people, that's who's paying the price for that.
I want to talk about some of the job opportunities, too, from both of you guys. There's so much connectivity, too, as far as people who are really responsible for getting those things on the shelves or getting that fuel in the vehicles of America. And we'll continue our conversation with Austin Golding, Barge Line, and also Jim Richards, President and CEO of KLLM Trucking. And also where they'll come in and train you everything else. We'll talk about that when we come back. Earlier, I told these guys I would play this one to show you that this administration really doesn't give a squat about the majority of people in this country, the middle class, regardless of white, black, or brown. He really doesn't. It's all of these fragmented groups. Here he is yesterday, day before, and this makes all the sense in the world.
I'm announcing 5 new initiatives. First, a new initiative involving 17 departments and agencies to protect tribal treaty rights in the work of the federal government. Second, a new initiative to increase tribal participation in the management and stewardship of federal lands. Third...
Wait a minute. What would that be?
I have no idea.
A PR department or tourism for you to go to a reservation? To get a reservation on a reservation? I'm
going to need to know more.
My administration will be the first to work with the tribes to comprehensively incorporate tribal ecological knowledge into the federal government's scientific approach.
Okay, Jim, explain that one to me.
Yeah, well, the tribes are very economic, environmentally ahead of things, and they can help us with that. They know
something that the scientists all these years haven't figured out yet.
Hadn't you watched Yellowstone?
Yes.
Helping us fight climate change. And fourth, taking action to protect the greater Chaco landscape in northwestern New Mexico from future oil and gas drilling.
There you go.
And leasing.
There's answered all our problems.
Yeah, that's it. And like Alaska, a lot of these folks don't want you to mess them up because they're making money on this, and sometimes that's their only source of revenue. Let's talk about this as far as the labor shortage, and to either of you guys. How many jobs right now, Jim, do you think you have open? And if you got 4,000 trucks across the country, that's got to be a pretty good number.
Well, Paul, I can tell you that we have about 350 fewer drivers today than we had 12 months ago. So we keep our fleet in static with the number of drivers we have, so we don't carry excess capacity and cost. But the appetite, we could hire 1,000 drivers tomorrow and keep them busy. So it's an unending appetite.
Age limits, tell me a little bit about who you're looking for.
Well, we typically no one less than 21 years old, and that's something that unfortunately the Republicans pushed against my feelings on that. But 18-year-olds in commercial motor vehicles just not the answer, quite frankly. But it's a little bit concerning to me that I think that the decision has been made to put 18-year-olds in the cab of a truck to try to help the supply chain at the same time. I can promise you from a safety perspective on U.S. highways, that's not going to be a good situation.
Your requirements to be 21.
21,
okay.
That's correct. And that's the current requirements in the entire industry prior to that being put into the infrastructure bill.
If male, female, doesn't matter. Age really doesn't matter?
No, absolutely not.
If you have somebody who's 45, 50 years old decides that this is a good deal, I want to do it, they don't have a CDL, how arduous is that to get?
Oh, not at all. I mean, they can get a CDL in 9 weeks. And we have a lot of people that retire from one occupation and decide they want to drive a truck later in life, and they do that. So
Can they carry their spouse or girlfriend or
absolutely.
boyfriend with them?
I mean, we have husband and wives that sell everything they own, quite frankly. They retire, sell their home, drive a truck, and then they take vacation wherever they like and rent a condo for a week. So it's just a way for them to kind of continue to work and do something different.
Traveling nurse, but a little bit different.
Absolutely.
That's not a bad idea.
No.
What are we talking about as far as income is concerned?
That's interesting. We've seen a massive increase in income to be a truck driver. I mean, you can make $100,000 very easily. I think within 2 years, you're probably going to see that number 120, 125. So it's a very lucrative occupation.
Your expense on the road is all yours, or can you? Some of them have sleeper cabs, I understand.
Well, all of ours have sleeper cabs, and so but they do pay their own expenses as far as food. Yes, fuel, everything. We cover all of that.
How about insurance, medical insurance?
Yes, we have medical insurance, full benefits, et cetera. So, I mean, it's a great job.
If somebody doesn't, they've never driven a big rig, of course, I know you've got a school for that. Is that only here or is it elsewhere?
No, we have schools in Dallas, Jackson, opening up one in North Carolina now, and we also have one in Chicago.
You say that was 9 weeks?
Yes, it's 3 weeks in class and then 6 weeks on the road with a trainer.
That cost them how much?
It cost them nothing.
So it doesn't.
We ask for is 1 year of employment.
Wow.
And we pay for the entire thing. We even pay for their meals and housing and even pay for their permits. So it's really no cost whatsoever.
You guys about the same thing. I mean, it's a very good pay as far as barge line is concerned.
We are. I mean, entry level, you start as a deckhand, and we actually have a 20-year-old limit just to even be a deckhand. So I can totally understand where he's coming from as far as 18-year-olds and responsibility in a commercial setting. But we start you at $35,000, and then 5 to 6 years into that process, you've doubled your salary 2 years in to become a tankerman, which is unloading and loading our barges, $70,000 to $80,000 in pay, full suite of benefits. And then to become a pilot, you're at the 135 to 150 stage, which is really the top of the food chain. That's a 5 to 6 year process, like I was saying, and you can do that before you're 30 years old, like I'm sure you can at KLLM. It's a great opportunity that allows you to really control your own destiny. If you're interested in being self-made, if you don't like working in an office setting, if you like seeing the country from the inside out, both our industries are great options for you.
Your job requires a little bit more of physicality, does it not? I mean, you have a lot of women there who can handle that.
Well, we do. We have a lot. We actually.
I wouldn't mess with them. I can tell you.
We have
that.
a female captain, and Captain Cat would come after you now.
Oh
so
man,
be careful.
That name alone would scare me.
She likes it. Yeah, I think she came up with it. She's pretty tough, but yeah, it's a male dominated industry. But I tell you, we with this labor shortage, I've been actively pushing to reach into other demographics that maybe aren't as familiar with our industry as were before, and we're as diverse a company now as we've ever been. So I think that's a good silver lining to a bad situation here is we're able to reach out and get new people.
Jim, can they, as far as KLLM, choose where they want to go as far as the route's concerned based out of any particular office?
Yeah, Paul, we have regional fleets, one in Chicago, one in Atlanta, one in Dallas, so they can run regionally, they can run long haul, they can run local. So we have a lot of different, job opportunities.
They can
keep
back and forth
closer to home. They can move back and forth between the two.
Yeah, they get tired of making that drive from Louisiana to El Paso.
They can absolutely do that. And one thing Austin mentioned, and one thing we've done in the trucking business, is to attract women and others. We run all automatic transmissions now. The technology in these trucks now is amazing.
I was going to say they don't have to load and unload.
No.
So all they've got to do
is drive.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, we've done everything we can to take all the responsibility off of them other than driving. We think from a safety standpoint that makes a lot of sense. We're in the refrigerated business. They don't even have to monitor the temperature or set the temperature on the trailers. We do all that from inside the office. And so we've done everything we can to really make it as easy as we can for them. And these trucks are phenomenal. I mean, they are literally they're very nice.
You using the different brands, or do you have one particular truck?
We run two different brands. Primarily, we run Freightliner. We've been a Freightliner shop for a long time, and they've got a great product. But we do run Kenworth as well.
What's the horsepower in these?
Oh, we run 500 horsepower.
500.
Yeah, 500 horsepower. But, we're getting great fuel mileage. We do a lot of things from a fuel mileage perspective. I'll tell you this, from a lot of it's aerodynamics too, but just from about 5 years ago, fuel mileage has gone from about 6.5 miles per gallon to 8 miles a gallon. So we've made drastic improvements in miles per gallon.
When you were, and you haven't been on a long time, but when he shared a story with us when he was on before, you talk about everything's controlled there. So all they got to do is drive, but you will let them know when the price of gas at the next location is the best.
Yeah, we actually tell them where to fuel and how many gallons to purchase, and that's based on the price per gallon that morning. We get an updated price of every stop in the country every day.
Think about this: when you do this with 4,000 trucks, that adds up to millions of dollars in savings over the year.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if they just stop anywhere haphazardly.
Well, absolutely. So we tell them exactly based on the taxes and the price per gallon. We tell them exactly where to buy, how many gallons to buy, and there are a lot of dollars saved by doing that and directing them where to purchase.
All of that is computer done. Everything is done from your home office, one of the home offices.
Absolutely, it couldn't be done any other way.
Set the temperature. You mentioned also a story about the altitude versus the ice cream, and I've never forgotten that story.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Share that again for people who haven't heard it.
So M&M Mars is one of our largest customers, and the technology that we have is just really incredible. But they make Snicker bars, and we would haul Snicker bars from Hackettstown, New Jersey, out to the West Coast, and for some reason we kept arriving at the receivers, and the chocolate would be cracked. And so at first they started thinking it was a carrier problem and we were having temperature problems or whatever. But what they ended up finding out was it was an altitude problem. So now that We know that. We actually change the temperature when we're going into high altitudes and crank it down to minus 20 and actually freeze the candy to keep the chocolate from cracking and then thaw it out when it comes out the other side.
That
so
is crazy.
A lot of things we can do to
Crazy. Now, all of that's got to have a Wi-Fi connectivity?
No, absolutely not. Everything's done.
Satellite?
Satellite, that's correct.
Final segment with these guys coming up next. We'll answer some of the questions or ask some of the questions on C-Spire. Segment here of our roundtable with Austin Golding and also Jim Richards. Let me get to some of these questions here because we have limited time. Anything home daily in Mississippi for KLLM? And is there anything where you can drive and stay at home too? Most
yes,
of that, is it?
Yeah, there are. We do have a dedicated fleet for Sanderson Farms. We do some dedicated business here in Mississippi.
So would they go a couple of 100, 300 miles and back or whatever?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have some local jobs here.
So if you want, is it only in the Jackson area?
We also have them in Dallas. We have them, in Chicago,
So if you live in the capital city area, you could get this job and be back home.
Correct.
Save it home. Yep. Okay. KLLM.com.
That's correct.
If you want more information on that one. CDL drivers, which is commercial driver's license. CDL drivers must pass a DOT physical, need to have blood pressure under control, and need to be a non-insulin dependent diabetic.
That is correct.
I would imagine that would be. As far as you guys' physical requirements, what are both of you guys doing as far as marijuana, medical marijuana?
Well, Coast Guard, we're mandated federally by the Coast Guard. So even if it's legal in Mississippi, you can't use it.
You won't be if you have a medical marijuana card, you can't use it.
And with the states that have it legal now, there's a existing precedent that Coast Guard federal regulation preempts any of the local allowment. So same reason you can't drink on the boat.
I got you, Jim. The same thing with you guys.
Yeah, same thing. We're regulated by the feds, and so even though Colorado it's legal, it's not legal on a truck. We also at KLLM we go one step further than what's required. We do hair testing. So you got to be able to pass a hair test, and so we just feel like it's a smart thing for us. Perez would have a hard time.
The pay rate during training, is that effective? I'm just asking the questions from C-Spire text line. If they're training, do they get any during that 9 weeks?
Oh, absolutely.
So you are on a salary during the 9 weeks. So you're on the books.
You're
from
on
that
the books.
Point
You're
on
a salary.
How about you guys?
Same way. We're post-employment.
So that answers that question. And anything else? Let's say, here's a big one. Does freezing keep potato chip bags from popping, or is altitude still the culprit? I have no idea where that came from.
I don't haul potato chips, so I couldn't tell you.
Drove a truck for 15 years, hauling grain from a farm under the farm tag, which required no CDL. Just acquired my CDL and can't get a job because can't prove experience. So I have to go to school for insurance purposes.
That is correct. If you can't prove experience, then you're treated just like a new driver.
So 9 weeks, but then again, if you want a job, you're on the pay scale right there.
That's correct. To Austin's point, post-employment. So the first 3 weeks while you're in school, we just pay all your expenses, but you start making a salary after you hit the road.
601, we changed to shipping from Shanghai to L.A. to Shanghai to New Jersey. Cost me 15% more on the front end, but I got my containers 3 weeks earlier.
And that's exactly the type of decision that companies are going to be faced with: time versus upfront expense. And like we touched on off the air, I mean that's going to be passed on to the consumer.
DEF is about $3 a gallon, according to this guy. And ask Jim his thoughts on lowering the age to get a CDL to 18, and we just talked about that. And we know what Jim's thoughts are on that one. So final thoughts from Austin. What do you think, sir?
Well, I think in this country we have to make everybody aware of the jobs that companies like ours are providing, and promote those jobs as very attractive and respectable career paths. And not just jobs, career paths with promotability, increased wages, and a full suite of benefits. And we have to get this this supply chain situation figured out. And I think the common sense people have to come to the table and take the discussion over. And we have to start putting some real thought into the ground.
I think it's one of those words or phrases we used to use a long time ago. If you're willing to work, the world is your oyster right now. If your work ethic is good and you really want to work, you can do anything you want to right now. Jim, your final thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I would agree. And I do think that some things coming out of this is I think, at least in the trucking business, I mean, the job is changing. And the job has to change. The folks that want to go out and stay away from home 2 to 3 weeks at a time, those folks don't exist anymore. And so we're changing a lot of what we do. At KLLM, we run about 3,000 intermodal containers, and so we're doing a lot of the long haul on the rail. Which gives us a lot more local jobs for folks so they can stay close to home. As the question was asked earlier, that's a common question that we receive, and people just don't want to stay gone away from home as much as they did. So we are seeing a transition in the industry and in the job itself.
Do you, for the inexperienced, the ones who come out of the 9 weeks training and they're on the road for the first time, are you driving with somebody else at that particular time, or how long do you go solo?
Yeah, so you're in the classroom for 3 weeks, and then for 6 weeks, you're on the road with a trainer for that 6-week period. And so after that, then you can be on the road by yourself after 9 weeks.
I'm going to imagine when you have a big rig like that, and it's a little daunting. If you're going through, like we mentioned, leaving the Louisiana, going through El Paso and eastern Texas, all flat, but you go through Dallas, and you want a guy with the most experience driving that way.
Well, I say a lot of times, we're kind of crazy in the trucking business. We take somebody that maybe has grown up in the Mississippi Delta his entire life, never left Mississippi. We put him in a 18-wheeler and send him to Los Angeles for his first trip with $1 million worth of cargo. Great way to make a living, Paul.
I was going to say, that's boot camp. Hey, guys, thank you so very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Most informative. Look, if you want to look at more information, it's on the website. Go to
goldenbarge.com
and
KLLM.com.
That's simple. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it very much. Happy holidays to you.